Hello, and welcome to another episode of our Beyond Core series. And today I would like to talk about a very important topic, and it's about being late, or better to say, how to avoid being late. As we work together with a lot of corporates, helping them to build new businesses, we very often see that those corporate teams, those innovation teams, are running late with their projects, and then they face severe issues with high costs of delay. And the question was, why do they run late? I mean, they implemented Agile methodologies like Scrum, and they work, kind of ambitious on all of their topics with a lot of resources. So how can it happen that they are running late? And so we conducted also a study about fast teams. And out of this study about fast teams also evolved a new methodology, what we call fast time to market. And in this series, in this video today, I would like to give you an introduction to the whole topic. I want to give you an insight on how to implement fast time to market, and hopefully it will help you to avoid those high costs of delays inside of your ventures. If you're a startup or a corporate team, doesn't matter. Before we start, some words about me. I'm Matthias. I'm co-founder and CEO of Fast Break One. We are a venture studio, and we are working together with corporates in building new businesses. I'm also a serial entrepreneur. I've done several startups by myself, now very closely working with corporates in building those startups. We see ourselves not as consultants, as we are not doing consultancy work. We are a venture studio, so we are also bringing our own investments to the topics, and we are we love to have skin in the game, as we believe this is the true joint motivation, joint incentive, which drives the success of each startup, at each collaboration. If you don't have the skin in the game, then you are acting like a consultant, and then you are more interested in increasing the length of a project. Our interest is, getting traction as fast as possible and make it a viable business as fast as possible as well. I have also worked with corporates before, so spent, for example, 7 years in the semiconductor industry, but also 7 years in the software industry. So I know a lot about the corporate environment, but also the startup environment. And as I said, we as Fast Break One, we act mainly here in Europe. We have customers from different kind of industries, so we are industry agnostic, but our main topic is, our specialty are platforms and network effects. So we help them to build those digital ecosystems around specific positions in the market. It could be a marketplace, but could be also IoT platforms, as we see different kinds of platforms right now in the market. But this is our specialty, the business model, but also how to scale network effects and make those platforms really, really successful. So what I want to talk about today are three things. First, just a kind of a story why we think, or what we observed, why corporate ventures often run late. Then we will give you a bit of a short intro about the best practices we have learned from our study of successful venture projects. And then in the third part, we will share with you the insights on fast time to market best practices. Let's go straight into the first part. And as I said at the beginning, when we work with teams, we very often see those typical stages of a venture project, especially in the corporate environment. And it all starts with a very small team, a very focused team with a very good understanding about the customer situation. And they have customer understandings, they have voice of customers, they have developed a very fantastic concept, validated the concept, and they know now we want to launch it, now we want to bring this to life with an MVP. And very often they have also a specific target date in mind and addressed. Could be a specific event in the year, like a fair where you want to launch it because it's an industry fair, and when you launch it and you have a kind of a first mover advantage, or it could be a specific market window like Christmas time. So if you launch it before Christmas, then you have the opportunity because a lot of customers are spending a lot of money around Christmas. So there are very often those specific dates in the market, events in the market around the year, and they have a clear focus on that one. So they really work aligned on the topic. But then the next stage happens, and this project attracts attention from management, and they think this is a fantastic way. It helps us to build new business. So to support the team, we bring in more resources, so meet more people. So the team is growing, but at the same time, the pressure to market remains the same. So we need to makes absolutely sense. As you say, okay, we have the same time, but we now have more resources, so it should be easier to reach. But with more and more people joining the team, you also spend more and more time on alignment, onboarding them, coordination, etc. And so you see the first symptoms, which is a slight delay in the project. And then the next stage happens, what we call structure over speed. The people understand, oh, we are running late, so how can we address those issues? And very often they bring in their experience, their known structures from their proven corporate hierarchy. So what they have experienced in the past. So they worked in the corporate hierarchy, and they said, okay, we have teams like marketing, sales, business development, technology development, etc. So why not bring in those structures into our project? And so they are, instead of all aligning, they are more like separating themselves. So they are creating silos, they are creating work streams, and then it even further makes the whole thing worse because it requires more and more coordination. They have less alignment, as they said, okay, we in our work streams, we are independent, we are working, we have the freedom to work, so we can be faster, but the opposite is true. And a typical sign of this are those kind of roadmaps or work stream maps, or whatever you want to call them. But the picture you see on the left-hand side is a typical sign when teams are working in parallel with different work streams at the same thing, but you cannot clearly predict what is our end date, who is really responsible, how are the resources aligned, etc. And so the problem is, beside all of those coordination things, the project is still running late, further delays happening, and maybe they are running out of money, or maybe they are running out of motivation. Top management is saying, let's stop this, maybe let's pause this, or maybe you now have 1 year delay because you missed the market window you addressed originally, and now you need to rescue the program. So the question is, how could this happen? Because all of those things I mentioned, a lot of resources, a lot of money is available, people also starting to implement Agile. So why is this happening? And before we go into this, you need to understand what are the benefits of entering the market at the right time, and what is the impact of being late. The green curve here means you are entering the product, the service, the platform at the right time. So you typically go through a concept stage, a prototyping stage, and then you want to launch it as a specific market window, so the right time. And so if you hit this, then you have, of course, early market, early adopter advantage. So you go early into the market, you have better times to monetize. So you have higher increased revenue. You have maybe also higher margins because you are the early movers, and maybe you have also reduced development costs because you are on time. And especially for startups, it is good. You have accelerated valuations. But if you are going and you see that you are late, then what happens? With being late, it means you have extended development expensive. Yeah, each month longer development costs you a lot of money. Maybe you are running out of money. Your runway is getting shorter and shorter, and also you lose management buy-in. So there has a lot of impact of being late, and you can cumulate everything into a cost of delay expression. And this is what we always use. We try, when we start those projects, to measure what would it cost us to be 1 month or 2 months or 3 months late. So we have a clear euro behind, and with this euro behind, we can also increase or improve our decision making when we do trade-off decisions. But I come to that in a second. So important is to understand being late always means higher cost of delays. Very often, this is not the case in corporates. Or in corporates, it's not the case that they calculate those cost of delays, and this is a big problem. And but what we also see in corporates right now, so in the last 10, 15 years, they spend a lot of time in training teams and transforming teams into agile teams, implementing Scrum, etc. But Scrum and Agile, they have a lot of advantages, but also some kind of things we think are missing. So the good thing about Scrum is, for example, you have a clear customer understanding. So you listen to the customer, called voice of customer. You also deliver a product, a working product frequently. So you prefer shorter timescales. You have higher motivated individuals because they are trusted. They are working on something which is showable to the customer and works. You have also regular intervals where the team reflects on how to become more effective, like with the sprint reviews. And you have very informal communication cycles. It's more shorter, it's more frequent, fewer documents, etc. But what we think is missing is the ability to determine the overall project duration. So if you ask a team, then they can tell you, yes, we are in sprint number X, and we have maybe those number of sprints ahead of us, but exactly determine where we will end up with our project, nobody can tell you. So are we now months late, or half a month late, or maybe 3 months late, or maybe earlier? Nobody can really predict. They are really stick to their cycles of sprints. Another thing is about the critical path analysis. This is maybe an old school thing from the typical project management thing, but the critical path really helps you to understand what is sitting on the long pole, which determines the end date of your project. And then you can really address those primary reasons for delays, or you can work on those activities to pull in the predictive end date. And if you're not working with critical paths and the dependencies between tasks, you cannot do this. And this is also the typical case for Scrum. Everybody is working on tasks, but nobody can really tell you which task is now dependent on which other task, etc. Another thing is also about different perspectives. So between short-term, long-term, yes, you have some OKRs and you have maybe some quarterly goals, but very often you break it down into sprints. But you cannot really tell me, okay, what is now long-term ahead in half a year, 9 months or 12 months, as we talk about some longer projects. And as I said before, also the cost of delay is not calculated. Nobody can tell you the cost of delay. And the cost of delay is really important for decision making. So if you want to make a trade-off decision, say, what would it cost to bring in an additional resources versus working 1 month longer with our current team? You can, or if you invest into buying a specific part instead of developing it by yourself, those kind of trade-off decisions you cannot make if you don't know the cost of delay. And about the management-oriented report, this is also kind of missing in Scrum. So very often what we see in Scrum environments is that you have those backlogs and those task tracking tools and everything in place, but when it comes to management reporting, then the program manager creates a PowerPoint presentation to summarize where they are, creating a kind of a roadmap, a timeline to show it to management. And this timeline is independent from the actual work. This is what he would like to communicate, but it's not reflecting 100% the reality. Sometimes they hide the reality before for the top management because they fear maybe the reaction of the management. So from our point of view, those agile practices are good, but it requires a kind of an add-on to be suitable for time-sensitive projects where you face high costs of delay. And this is especially true when you are a startup, a new team, a new venture, and you want to go to market and you have a high pressure to go to market as fast as possible. And then working in those sprints is not good. But after you release the first version, or a more stable version, and then you want to go into a more continuously improving pattern, then Scrum is fantastic. Then you can work on your sprints, you can collect customer feedback and improve step by step your existing project or service. But in our case, when we launch, when we go to market, then something else is missing or is required. So what are the best practices of fast teams? So now we want to give you a short intro to fast time to market, the methodology, how we it called. And I first came over this early prototype of methodology about 15 years ago when I worked with a company from Silicon Valley. They are specialized on product development teams, technology development teams, and they started to conduct a study about product teams in the Silicon Valley. What makes those fast teams fast and separates them from other ones? And though they reaped a huge feedback, and they filled it into their research database, and we continue to do this with our venture projects here in Europe. And we created a kind of a set of best practices, which you can split into 3 parts. So first, if you are running a portfolio, then you need something to supervise a portfolio of projects, of ventures, which venture you would like to give which kind of resources to accelerate, but also about the environment itself. So how can you set up the right organizational structure, and about the execution. So how can you implement the right processes that the team can stick to accelerate. And so we identified a lot of best practices, and we fueled those into a new methodology called fast time to market. So what is this new methodology, or kind of, we call it also an add-on to Agile? And to summarize it, it's a kind of a set of tools, methodologies, best practices, but also a behavioral change. And then the key for us is that it helps you to create a cross-functional alignment. As we always say, the team, a startup team, is a cross-functional team. So you need to bring in resources or expertise from different areas like product development, customer understanding, sales, marketing, etc., etc. And they all need to focus and they need to work together in a cross-functional team. But to enable this team, you need to give them indicators. So kind of forward-looking indicators. Are we on the right track? When do we will hit the market? What is now our predicted end date or go-to-market date, etc. But you will also equip them with metrics, looking back. What is our trend? Are we delaying further and further, or are we accelerating further and further? So what are our trends? And you want to give them also kind of tools at the hand where they can really map out the whole project, the dependencies, etc. So at the bottom line, the FTTM system consists of 3 things we implement. First, how you set up the team. Second, how you run a process. And third, a kind of a reporting thing where you can, by click, generate reports for top management where you communicate the truth and not something else. so making it also really, really lightweight. First of all, the team setup. Here we call the team setup, we call the team integrated venture core team. And part of it, and our strong belief is that in most organizations, especially when you have multiple of those venture teams running in parallel, you try to optimize everything. This is also a typical pattern you see in corporates with their shared service center methodology or the structures, where they also think we can bring this shared service thinking also to our ventures. Means here we have a team of marketing guys, here we have a team of technical developers, and here we have a team of whatever else is required. And then each venture team can borrow some parts from those shared service teams. Means one guy from the technology development is maybe working 20-30% of its time for venture A, 20-30% of the time for venture B, and the remaining time for venture C. But this also means he's only spending 1 or 2 days per week for a single venture, and is not 100% dedicated to that one. And if he goes on vacation or is ill or something else is happening, the prioritization of project B is more important than A, then he spends more on B instead of A, but he maybe against all the things you agreed to. But anyway, it's a shared resource, and so you see a lot of difficulties. And we say if you really want to be fast, you need to allow those teams to run independently. So you have dedicated teams. That's why we call it integrated venture team, where you bring all the required resources to the team. And then they are 100% focused, they are 100% aligned, and they have no other things to coordinate and switch, etc. So they are really 100% dedicated to a specific venture. The next thing is that we always implement a so-called process. And this process is 3 parts. It starts by building up a structure of tasks. Second, to model and create a schedule, and then running into a refresh process, which is happening every week. And I will give you an insight about that one. So the first part of building is about creating a structure for the project. This is clearly to understand what do we really want to build for our customers. What do customer value, what customer really want, and breaking it down into specific development tasks. Then the second part is about modeling. Here we take all the tasks from the work breakdown structure into a timeline. So we create a timeline with the dependencies, with the durations, etc. And here we can also think about, based on what we have mapped out, maybe the timeline is 1.5 years, but when we look at the timeline, maybe we can do some strategic pull-ins, so major pull-ins, where we can reduce the time by several months. And then we go into the refresh process, where we update the schedule on a weekly basis. And we have seen very fast teams, very mature teams, who are going into the refresh process 2 or 3 times per week. But at the beginning, it should be one time per week. And here you can really update the schedule to really reflect the reality. And here you work on what we call tactical pull-ins. So on days, on weekly basis, and not instead of months. And here you start also to break down tasks into subtasks. And here we also say what is long-term and far away stays long-term. But when it comes to closer, everything what is near-term, what is happening in the next 1 or 2 months, we will break it down into further subtasks to better understand what exactly is happening here. Can be further reduce dependencies, can we further accelerate? And we also start our reporting by tracking trends. So how is this happening? First, for the build, we have also, we are using as our main tool Microsoft Project, but we created also an add-on of that called Fast Project. And this add-on allows you to, with several wizards, to avoid common mistakes when modeling out projects in Microsoft Project. And one of that is also to set up the work breakdown structure and put it into a basic schedule by asking you specific questions. When will the project be done? What are the milestones? How do you measure the doneness of those milestones? What are the macro activities? Who are the owners and durations, etc. With all of those inputs, you can easily model a schedule, let's say in 1 hour. Then you created a rough schedule for your project, and you can start thinking about, is this reflecting what you think is true? Is something happening more in parallel, etc. And as you can see here on the screenshot, we also define 2 things. First, you see at the bottom of the screenshots a red arrow, a triangle, and this is the target date. And then you see also a small diamond, a red diamond at the bottom right. This is the predicted end date. And the predicted end date depends on the task and the critical path you see here with the red task aligned towards the diamond. And this is the actual prediction date. And here you see the gap. Now here we see, first of all, a clear measurement between when do we want to launch, for example, and our predicted end date. So here we see about maybe 1 year or whatever difference in between target date and end date. And this is the first time the team also understands, okay, our target date is maybe too aggressive or whatever. And then they think about, okay, is the timeline really correct, not correct? Do we need to change something, etc.? And this is what I meant with the strategic pull-in. Here you start thinking about how can we really maybe run things in parallel, do things differently, or maybe we need to communicate that the target date was too aggressive and we need to set the target date to a later date. And then you go into a refresh process, and the refresh process is, as I said, happening once per week. And the actual meeting, the refresh meeting, is maybe something like a half an hour meeting. So it's not long. It's really short. So we also said we need to reduce the time we spend on coordination and on meetings. We need the time to actually work on tasks. So let's try to implement a structure which is really lean and straightforward. And how does it work? Before we have our meeting every week, we send out a so-called look-ahead report. It's kind of a task list to remind the team. Those were the tasks from the last week where we said those are the most important tasks. Please prepare to bring to the meeting an update for those tasks. And then when we go into the meeting itself, we spend 1/3 of the meeting to update the plan. When you talk about 30 minutes, then it's 10 minutes for updating the plan. And then we have about 2/3 of the meeting where we talk about how can we further accelerate, how can we pull in the project. And to achieve that, we created also a wizard, and I'll show you in a second how it works, which avoids long discussions among the team. And after we finish the whole discussion with updating and the pull-in, we create a wiggle chart, kind of a trend report, which we can send out to the management, telling, hey, we are on track, we are running late or further late, or so we can clearly articulate what is the trend, because the management team also always wants to understand the trend. And if they understand the trend, then we can better make decisions on what to do next. And after the meeting, we send out again those look-ahead report, the task lists, the work plan for the coming week. It clearly shows those are the critical tasks. Here are the owners of those tasks. Please ensure that you work on them because they are on the critical path. So how does it work with the refresh? How can we achieve that we update the plan in 10 minutes? And without the wizards, typical situation in the meeting is like you ask Marcus, please give me an update about the task, and he starts to, yeah, we have done this and this, and we faced some issues here and there. So I can think about maybe task is done 60%. Then you ask Jennifer, please give me also an update about your task. Then she said, yeah, we have also done this and this, and we have run into other issues, and here we communicated and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, maybe by the way, maybe we are done by 35%, and so on. And so it consumes a lot of time, but at the end, with all of those informations, you cannot really update the schedule. So it is nice to know, but very often some other people in the meeting sitting there are bored by the expressions, and then you have people talking more than others. So it's not really balanced and not really fast. So we said we need to do it in a different way. We need to nail it down to the informations we need. And so we go through a kind of a wizard, a dialogue, which asks you, hey, Marcus, you needed to do task XX. Have you started? Yes or no? If yes, when have you started? Okay. Is it complete? Yes, no. If no, how many days you need to complete it, Tim? Is there a risk attached to it? Yes, no. How big? Let's give us some comments. But do you see, then you go through an update of a task within 15 seconds or so, instead of 2-3 minutes of expressions. And so it allows you to go through the tasks in the next, which are running or maybe ahead in the next week within less than 10 minutes. And so you have updated the schedule, which is really, really important, because then your schedule reflects the reality from this point, from this status meeting. And then you can talk about the further breakdown. Okay, let's have a look into the future. So next 2-3 weeks, we're facing those macro activities, and the macro activities are maybe tasks which lasts maybe 10, 20 days, 30 days or whatever. And to better understand what is inside of those tasks, we need to break them down into subtasks. And again, here also a wizard helps us to break them down into 5, 6, 7, 8 subtasks, and ensures that they are aligned with each other, linked with each other, etc., by a click. So you don't need to spend minutes of Microsoft project tooling to update the schedule. It's done by a click, and you can really focusing on looking at the task, discussing the task by itself. And then we go into this discussion, as we said, about how can we pull in the schedule. Here the team looks together on the schedule. They see the dependencies, they see what have we achieved, which kind of tasks slipped out, which task we accelerated. We can maybe relink tasks because we think, okay, maybe this dependency is wrong, or we break down tasks further and say, okay, from a 20-day task, we have broken it down into 5 subtasks, and then we understand some of this is also happening in parallel, and so on. So we can further scrub and model it into the plan to further understand what needs to, what is driving the long pole of the project. And then we go into the analysis of the critical paths. When you are in the early phases of implementing fast time to market, you look at the first critical path, so at the longest pole in the project plan. If you are more mature, you can also pull down, and we call it peel the onion, to discover the second, third, fourth critical path and really understand what is really driving this project. And then also by click, you can generate those look-ahead reports. You can share via email. You can put it on a shared drive where people see, okay, what are the top tasks, who has to work on what, and we also track a bit of a trend if it's a running task. So if it's further delayed, on time or whatever, so we have a bit of an understanding. But you can clearly address a task with clear responsibilities to the team. And a very powerful part is also the wiggle chart, what we create at the end. And here you see an example at the bottom right. It shows you that the horizontal line is the actual date of the update of the refresh meeting, and each dot in the chart represents the predicted end date. So at a certain time, when we updated, when we done the refresh, then the predicted end date was this one. And typically, you see the cross of the dotted white line and the vertical white line. This cross, this intersection, this is the date where the target date is, where we want to finish. And here you see at the beginning of the project, maybe we had some larger wiggles because it was a new plan. We needed to work on the plan to fully understand it. But then later on, you see that the team updated it. It became a bit more stable, but it also became clear. Now we see a bit of a trend in half of the way. We thought about okay, we can achieve we can end the project earlier than our target date. So we also adjusted the target date. This is why the dotted white line is in the middle lower than at the beginning, because the team said, okay, let's be further aggressive and let's set a more aggressive target date. But later on, they also learned, okay, maybe we cannot really achieve this because maybe of some boundaries. So let's move it back to the original one. And as you can see, green dots always indicate that you are early, and early really means you are banking time, because very often in all of those projects you face some things you could not predict, and so it's always good to bank some time. So for us, this whole methodology of fast time to market is a perfect add-on to all the agile instruments out there and the agile practices, and it fills the void, especially for the projects with time-sensitive projects with a high cost of delay. So especially in the early stages of a venture, of a innovation project. So the key takeaways for me are the agile methodologies are widely adopted, and they also improved. So they have brought a lot of benefits to the innovation teams, but they could not solve all the issues of being late, especially the ability to determine the overall project duration and to compare to the target date, actual date. Say this is kind of missing. Also, the cost of delay is currently missing, so none of the teams are really calculating them, but they are really crucial for decision making trade-off decisions. And therefore, the fast time to market system, with having the right team structure in place, having tools in place, having the best practices in place, this is really, really helping and filling the void of agile practices. And it helps you also to establish a culture of acceleration, where it is key to finish on time and not running late. The integrated team structure and the refresh process are the major elements you need to implement, and it can be done. So it's not rocket science. And so the agile team can implement FTTM from our point of view within 3 to 5 months of practice. So how to implement this? How you as a team can implement the methodology? And here we say you often go through different kind of maturity levels. As I said, it takes about 3 to 5 months, depending on how much time you spend on it. But in the first months, starting with a low maturity level, you will learn the best practices, you will install the tools and the processes, you have an initial schedule, you run your first refresh meetings, you start by modeling out the strategic pull-ins, you start reviewing the critical paths, etc. You also set up the wiggle charts and setting up the first report. So you set up the basics, and then in the second month, you can really start working on pulling in the critical paths. So you really walk the critical paths. You start by analyzing peel the onion things. You start by implementing pull-in actions. You also start creating those reports, sharing it with your management, and you start further breaking down the tasks. So it starts by really working with the schedule, and the schedule becomes the reality. And in months 3 to 4, then the team becomes more and more mature. So they run those weekly refreshes, very, very accurate. They start tracking the trends, and they start by peeling the onion, by looking at the critical paths 2 to 5 and really understanding what is really behind everything. And they really start also to create this momentum and this culture of acceleration where everybody is now more like motivated to further accelerate. At the beginning, it's more like, okay, let's do it. But in later stages, more like, okay, what else can we do to accelerate? So it really creates this whole motivation, this whole environmental change for the team. And this is also what I have observed in my past. The first time when I used it, it was in the semiconductor industry, and a lot of those development projects were always late by half a year, 1 year, and we implemented those fast time to market best practices. And we've been the first team in the whole company history which achieved the target date, which achieved the project and without any delays. And so this was a clear eye opener for me. And it was really about the culture of the team, that the whole team really worked together and started to see the big impact and feel the whole motivation to accelerate. So this was really, really, really powerful. And I can clearly recommend fast time to market for you. How can you implement this? What kind of services we can provide you for your venture project? It can start small with a capability assessment where we check how good you are implemented already, those best practices, but also about checking your project, about what are the risks for being late, how late you are, what is the schedule, etc. So you start creating an understanding. The second thing is about an acceleration program where we implement the whole framework for your project. So we bring in all the tools, the changes, etc. We teach the teams. And this, as I said, takes about 3 to 5 months. And then your whole project is kind of transformed into a fast time to market project. Another thing is about turnaround of a turnaround program. So we also are called in by teams who said, okay, we're running this project for now 2 years, but we can't really see that we are accelerating or that we are achieving what we really wanted. So we come in and help you to rescue. And it's not only about the project management, it's also about the business model itself. And how can you accelerate, for example, the scale up of your of network effects, etc. So we bring in the full package, the full entrepreneurial understanding, and not just project management. And a first engagement could be also about leadership coaching, especially when you are running and supervising a portfolio of ventures. So how can you make trade-off decisions between the different ventures? How can you analyze the cost of delay? How can we really what needs to be implemented as a governance framework, etc., so that the leadership team also is understanding what is required to be a fast team and to avoid high costs of delay. So with that, I come to an end. Thank you very much for joining and listening in. I hope you could learn a lot about fast time to market. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. And then, of course, we can have a call and we can discuss further. Other than that, please also feel free to listen to our other episodes of Beyond Core, or you go to our website with a lot of more articles about venture building, platforms, ecosystem strategies, and so on. We share a lot methodology-wise, but also knowledge-wise. So please join our hub of knowledge. And hopefully we see us soon in one of your ventures. And thank you for joining. Bye-bye.